Welcome. I hope you had a chance to attend the free masterclass, The Consistent Underwater Edit, or watch the replay. The replay will remain available until 10 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, July 25th, 2026. If you are watching this before 8 p.m. Central Time that day, you can still register and receive access at https://info.robertherb.com/masterclass. Now let's get started. When you open an underwater photograph in Lightroom, do you correct the color first, or do you start adjusting exposure, contrast, and dehaze? In this video, I will show you why white balance must come first, how it creates the foundation for every adjustment that follows, and why getting it wrong leads to rework later. I am Bob Herb, and this is the Consistent Underwater Edit. Most underwater photographers do not have a Lightroom tool problem. They know how to move exposure, contrast, saturation, and masking controls. The problem is deciding what should happen first. If white balance is still wrong, every later choice is being made on an unstable color foundation. You may brighten a subject because the color cast makes it look dull. You may add saturation because the colors seem weak. You may even create masks to rescue areas that only need the foundation corrected. Then you fix white balance, and those earlier adjustments no longer fit. That is backtracking, and it is exactly what a repeatable sequence helps prevent. White balance comes first because most underwater photographs begin with a color problem. As light travels through water, colors are absorbed unevenly. Reds, oranges, and yellows disappear quickly, and the file often shifts towards blue or green. In Lightroom and Lightroom Classic, Temperature and Tint help you correct the strongest overall color cast. But this step is not about finishing the photograph. It is not about final color, drama, or signature style. The goal is to create a believable enough starting point so you can judge the rest of the image more accurately. Before moving on, ask one simple question. Does the color feel believable enough to judge exposure, presence, color, and masking? This is why exposure comes after white balance in the system. White balance does not change the exposure you captured in the camera, but it does change how the image looks, and that affects how you judge the image. A heavily blue and green cast can make a subject feel dull, dark, or lifeless. If you start by raising exposure, opening shadows, or adding contrast before correcting that cast, you may be compensating for the wrong problem. Then when you finally correct white balance, the image can suddenly feel too bright, too warm, or overworked. That means you have to go back and redo exposure decisions you already made. Correct the color foundation first, then judge brightness. This is where the rework loop begins. If you move through exposure, presence, color, and masking before the white balance is reasonably corrected, you are making those decisions on top of a color problem. Then when you finally correct white balance, the image changes. The exposure may now feel too bright. Colors may look too strong. A mask that seemed helpful a minute ago may no longer blend naturally. That is not because Lightroom failed. It is because the sequence worked against you. White balance does not need to make the image perfect, but it does need to create a believable foundation before you build the rest of the edit. White balance underwater is rarely just one slider. Temperature helps move the image cooler or warmer. Tint helps correct the green and magenta shift that often appears underwater. This is why there is no single white balance number that works for every underwater photograph. A shallow reef scene, a deeper wreck image, a strobe lit macro photography, or a natural light wide angle scene may all need different temperature and tint decisions. The goal is not to memorize numbers or to use a preset. The goal is to ask whether the overall color feels believable enough for you to judge the next step. Once the strongest color cast is corrected, you can move forward to exposure with much more confidence. This is where many underwater photographers overwork the first step. They correct the blue or green cast, the image starts to look better, and then they keep pushing temperature and tint, trying to finish the entire photograph with white balance. That is when the image can start to look unnatural. The sand may become too warm. The water may shift in the wrong direction. Neutral areas may begin to look magenta. White balance is not the finished color treatment. It creates a believable foundation so you can judge the next step. Once the strongest color cast is corrected, stop. Move forward to exposure. Then let the rest of the system do its job. Before you leave white balance, ask one simple question. Does the color feel believable enough for me to judge the next step? Not perfect, not finished, not final color, just believable enough. Look for clues in the photograph. Sand, natural rocks, white markings on marine life, diver equipment, or any known color in the scene can help you judge whether the image still has a strong, unwanted cast. If the answer is no, stay with temperature and tint a little longer. If the answer is yes, move forward. That is one of the most important habits in the system. You do not stay in one step forever. You do the job of that step, then move on to the next decision. Here is the takeaway. White balance is where the edit begins, but it is not where the edit ends. Your job in step 1 is to correct the strongest color cast and create a believable foundation. Once that foundation is in place, you move forward. That is what makes the system work. White balance prepares the image for exposure. Exposure prepares it for presence. Presence prepares it for color. Color prepares it for masking. Masking prepares it for the final adjustments. When you work in this order, you are not guessing from slider to slider. You are making one decision at a time in a sequence that helps each step make the next step easier. The most important thing to remember is this. White balance is not just another slider. It is the first decision in the system because it creates the foundation for everything that follows. Correct the foundation first, then move forward. If you want to review this lesson, read the full article linked in the description. You can also download my free guide, 10 Lightroom Fixes for Underwater Photos, and subscribe so you do not miss the next video in this series. Next we move to step 2, exposure. Until next time, dive safe, shoot with intention, and edit with a system.